Have you ever poured your heart into someone you thought was family, only to have them turn around and stab you in the back? That's where I was 3 years ago, standing in the wreckage of my reputation, all because of my cousin, Lisa. I'm sharing this story because I know so many of you watching, especially those of us over 30, have felt the sting of betrayal from the people we trusted most. We've built lives on loyalty, on family, on the belief that those closest to us have our backs. But when that trust shatters, it's not just your heart that breaks, it's your sense of who you are. This is the story of how Lisa's lies tore me apart, how I fought to expose her, and how I rebuilt my name stronger than ever. It's a story about betrayal, but it's also about finding the strength to rise when you've been knocked down. Lisa and I grew up like sisters. Our moms were twins, so we were in each other's lives from the cradle. Sleepovers, shared secrets, the kind of bond where you don't even need words to know what the other's thinking. Even as adults, we stayed tight. I was the one she called at 2 a.m. when her marriage was crumbling, the one who helped her move when she couldn't afford rent. I loved her like blood. So when she started acting strange a few years back, I didn't think much of it. She'd always been a little dramatic, you know? But then I started hearing whispers. It started small. A friend from our old neighborhood asked why I'd been talking trash about her sister. I laughed it off. Me? I barely knew her sister. Then my aunt, Lisa's mom, gave me this cold look at a family barbecue and said, "I didn't think you were that kind of person." I pressed her, but she just shook her head and walked away. My stomach twisted. Something was wrong, but I couldn't pin it down. Then the bomb dropped. My best friend, Tara, pulled me aside and showed me a group chat. Lisa had been telling people I'd been spreading vicious rumors about her, lies about her divorce, her finances, even her parenting. She said I was jealous, that I'd always resented her success. Success? She was barely scraping by, and I'd been the one helping her. I confronted Lisa that night. My hands were shaking as I stood in her living room, asking why she'd say those things. She just smirked, like she'd been waiting for this. "You're too sensitive," she said. "Maybe you should check yourself before you come at me." I was floored. This wasn't just a misunderstanding. This was deliberate. She'd been planting these lies for months, turning family, friends, even our old high school crew against me. My phone stopped ringing. Invites to family dinners dried up. People I'd known my whole life started looking at me like I was a stranger. I felt like I was drowning in shame I didn't earn. The lowest moment came at my cousin's wedding. I'd helped plan it, even chipped in for the flowers because they were short on cash. But when I got there, I was seated at the back, with strangers, while Lisa was up front, laughing with everyone. My aunt wouldn't even look at me. I left early, crying in my car, wondering how my life had unraveled so fast. I'd lost my place in my own family. And for what? Lies. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. I kept replaying every moment with Lisa, trying to figure out what I'd done to deserve this. Was she jealous? Angry? I didn't know. All I knew was the pain of being cast out. But that night in my car, something shifted. I was 35, too old to let someone else write my story. I'd spent my life being the good one, loyal, forgiving, always there for family. And where had it gotten me? Humiliated. Alone. I wiped my tears and made a promise to myself. I was going to fight back. Not with lies or petty drama, but with truth. I was going to expose Lisa and take back my name. I didn't know how yet, but I knew I had to start somewhere. And what happened next? Well, it wasn't what I expected. The weeks after that wedding were a blur of anger and heartbreak. I'd wake up every morning with this heavy ache in my chest, like I was carrying a stone no one could see. I kept thinking about all the years I'd spent building my life, my friendships, my family ties, my reputation as someone you could count on. At 35, you start to feel like you've earned your place in the world, you know? But Lisa's lies had ripped that away. People I'd known forever were ghosting me. My own uncle unfriended me on Facebook after Lisa told him I'd disrespected her mom. I felt powerless, like I was screaming into a void and no one could hear me. But even in that darkness, there was this tiny spark inside me, this refusal to let her win. I started piecing things together. I called Tara, my best friend, who was one of the few still in my corner. She'd saved screenshots of Lisa's group chats, and they were uglier than I'd imagined. Lisa wasn't just lying. She was crafting a whole narrative. She told people I was bitter because she'd made it while I was stuck. Stuck? I had a steady job, a home, a life I was proud of. But she painted me as this jealous, petty villain. The worst part? She'd use my own words against me. I'd confided in her about my struggles, money stress, a rough patch at work, and she twisted those private moments into weapons. It wasn't just betrayal, it was a violation. I tried talking to my family, but it was like hitting a wall. My aunt said, "Lisa's going through a lot. You need to be the bigger person." My cousin, the bride from the wedding, told me to let it go because family fights aren't worth it. I wanted to scream. Why was I the one who had to swallow the pain? Why was Lisa's hurt more valid than mine? I started doubting myself. Maybe I was too sensitive. Maybe I'd said something to set her off. But then I found an old journal where I'd written about helping Lisa through her divorce, about staying up all night to talk her through her fears. I wasn't the villain here. She was. That journal was a turning point. I realized I couldn't just sit back and hope people would see the truth. I had to fight for it. But how do you fight lies without sinking to the liar's level? I didn't want to be like Lisa, spreading gossip or airing dirty laundry. I wanted to be better, to win with dignity. So I started small. I reached out to a few old friends, people who'd known me forever. I didn't beg or plead, I just told my side, calmly, with receipts. Tara helped me pull together those screenshots, and I shared them with two cousins who'd started giving me the cold shoulder. One of them, Mike, called me back, stunned. "I had no idea," he said. "Lisa made it sound like you hated her." That was my first crack of light. But Lisa wasn't done. When she heard I was talking to people, she doubled down. She posted a vague, tearful status online about toxic family and how she was done with the drama. Suddenly, I was getting texts from relatives I hadn't spoken to in years, telling me to leave her alone. It was infuriating. I'd spent my life being the peacemaker, the one who held the family together, and now I was the outcast. I remember sitting on my couch staring at my phone, feeling like I was losing everything. My hands were shaking, not just from anger but from fear. What if I couldn't fix this? What if this was my life now? But then I thought about my mom. She passed when I was 25, and one thing she always said was, "Your name is your truth. Don't let anyone take it from you." I'd been letting Lisa take mine, bit by bit. I couldn't change what she'd done, but I could change what I did next. I had two choices: let her lies define me or fight for the truth, no matter how hard it got. I chose to fight. I started planning, quietly, carefully. I wasn't going to let her control the story anymore. What I did next wasn't loud or flashy, but it was powerful. That decision to fight changed everything. I was done being the victim, done letting Lisa's lies paint me as someone I wasn't. At 35, I'd learned a thing or two about life. You don't get what you deserve, you get what you fight for. But I wasn't going to fight like her, with sneaky texts or public rants. I wanted to win the right way, with truth and dignity. So I got to work, step by step, exposing her lies and rebuilding my name. It wasn't easy and it wasn't quick, but it was worth every second. First, I leaned on the people who still believed in me. Tara and Mike became my anchors. Mike started talking to other cousins, sharing the screenshots I'd given him. I didn't ask him to. It was his choice, and that meant the world. Slowly, a few family members started reaching out, asking questions. I didn't badmouth Lisa. I just told my truth. I shared memories of what I'd done for her, helping with her rent, being there through her divorce. I let the contrast speak for itself. One by one, people started to see the cracks in her story. Next, I faced the harder part, confronting the family directly. I wrote a letter to my aunt, Lisa's mom. It wasn't angry or accusing. I poured my heart out, telling her how much her coldness had hurt, how I'd always seen her as a second mom. I included a few key screenshots, not to attack Lisa, but to show the truth. I mailed it, hands trembling, not expecting a reply. A week later, my aunt called. Her voice was shaky. "I didn't know," she said. "I thought you were the one causing trouble." She didn't apologize outright, but she invited me to dinner. That was huge. The turning point came at a family reunion. Lisa was there, playing the victim. But I was ready. I'd spent weeks preparing, not for a fight, but for a moment. When someone brought up the drama, I spoke up, calm but firm. I told everyone I'd been hurt by the lies, that I'd always loved my family, and that I had proof if anyone wanted to see it. I didn't call Lisa out by name. I didn't have to. The room went quiet. Later, two cousins pulled me aside and asked for the screenshots. They were shocked. Lisa left early that night. The final step was the hardest, letting go of the anger. Even as I cleared my name, I was still carrying the pain of what Lisa had done. I wanted her to hurt like I had, but I realized that wasn't freedom. Freedom was living my truth, surrounded by people who saw me for who I was. So I focused on rebuilding. I hosted a small barbecue, invited family who'd come around and laughed like I hadn't in years. Lisa wasn't invited, but word got back to her. I heard she'd been asking about me, trying to worm her way back in. I didn't bite. I'd already won. Looking back, I learned 6 things that carried me through. First, trust your truth. It's your greatest weapon. Second, lean on the loyal few. They'll hold you up. Third, show, don't tell. Evidence speaks louder than words. Fourth, stay calm, even when it hurts. It makes people listen. Fifth, choose your battles. Some fights aren't worth your energy. And sixth, forgive, but don't forget. I don't hate Lisa anymore, but I don't trust her either. That's my peace. This journey changed me. At 30, 40, or beyond, we've all got scars from people we love too much. But those scars don't define us. They remind us how strong we are. I took back my name, not just for me, but for everyone who's ever been wronged and refused to stay down. If you've got a story like this, drop it in the comments. I read every one, and I know we're stronger when we share. If this hit home, hit that like button and subscribe. I've got more stories coming. No matter how deep the betrayal, your story isn't over. You can rise, just like I did. Thanks for watching. Subscribe for more video.